Hey, good afternoon, everyone. We'll just give everyone a second to let their computers connect here. Oh, attendees are just flooding in. This is perfect. Best way to start a webinar. Okay. All right, we'll get started. So hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us today over your lunch hour for our webinar in sponsorship with ADR and the NSBA. My name is Jamie Polsom, and I am the operations support with Wes. And a big shout out to today's webinar sponsor, who's W Law. Our topic today is Reverse Engineer Your Marketing for Small Business Success, presented by Kara Sharp with Front Door Media. If you have any questions for her as we go through the presentation, feel free to submit them in the Q&A box, not the regular chat box. And Kara will try to answer them throughout, but it might be at the end. However, please do feel free to use the regular chat box to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your business. As always, this webinar is recorded and will be available for on-demand viewing on our website. With that, I'm going to pass it over to Kara to begin the presentation.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Jamie. I'm so excited to be here. Talking about marketing is one of my favorite topics, and sometimes I get a little bit excited and go a little bit too quickly. So please just let me know if I'm going too fast or glazing over any topics that you guys would like me to emphasize a little bit more. But today we're here to talk about reverse engineering your marketing. So what that actually means, or at least what it means to me, is to take a look at your existing results and then amplify them to improve your existing marketing efforts. So I'll show you what I do for a lot of different companies and how it's kind of applicable to a whole range of businesses, whether you're e-commerce, B2B, B2C, sell in store, in person, do consulting, that kind of a thing. The process can be applied in a variety of ways. But the whole goal of this is that we want to create an efficient marketing machine that lets you focus primarily on what is the most important. Because if you have a very small team or it's just you running your business, you need to really be efficient and focus on the important things. And marketing might not be one of those true loves like it is for me. So here is what we will get started with. Our agenda today. So we're going to talk a bit about setting goals, customer research, the process, and some good questions to ask when you are starting a business, starting an offer, how to develop the messaging and your core product or service offering and how to package that all together. We are going to touch briefly on implementation. We do not have time to talk about all of the different ways to implement the marketing. And then we're going to talk a little bit about tracking metrics and why it is so important. I did forget completely an introduction slide, but like she said at the beginning, my name is Kara Sharp. I've been running Front Door Media for a little bit over a year now. Prior to that, I worked in some companies in-house doing different marketing for software, tech, home builders, not-for-profits, branding, that kind of a thing. So I have a whole gamut of things and I've worn a lot of different hats. All right, so right up with goal setting. So why should we be setting goals? Goals are the backbone of any marketing strategy, any company really. And I've always found that when I'm joining a new company, they do not have very clear goals. And as a marketer, it makes it really tough to kind of go in the right direction to really understand what's a priority for the company. So setting goals kind of helps keep everyone focused and aligned. It also helps keep you motivated and keep you focused and gives you actionable targets. So you know what good looks like at the company and for your own company as well. Like if you don't have a direction on where you're going, you'll probably go in a whole bunch of different directions because there's always that new shiny object to be focusing on. And it makes it less efficient, I guess, if you're spread so thin. So if you think about it as if you're a one-person team, you can think of yourself as like wearing different like department hats. Maybe that's the marketing department, the CEO, accounting, etc., fulfillment, that kind of thing, operations. And so if you have clear goals, then your different departments, as you're wearing your different hats, are all nice and aligned. And then this will help you if you do choose to bring on more employees or scale or that kind of thing as well. So the first step in goals, I always really like to align them with, I guess, my values. And I struggled with this for a really long time myself. I was like, oh, what are values? Like, I'm a good person. I know that I am, but to really like lay out my values and why they're important and how they relate to my business was a pretty big struggle. I read Marketing Like We're Human. It's by Sarah Santacross. She's not very popular, but I would recommend you go check her out. She says something in her book about how you don't actually know what other people's goals are for their business, especially if you're somebody who's just like following them on Instagram and they're putting on that good show. And so the way that they're measuring their success might be different than how you think about measuring success. So for example, maybe you have more priority on spending time with your family versus earning more money, but maybe their focus is to get to that 6 or 7 figure business. But that doesn't make sense for you because it doesn't align with your goals. So I guess the idea here is just to stop comparing yourself to other businesses out there, making sure that your business actions align with what your values are and that you have that personal and business congruence as well. So here's a few different kind of like bullet points, I guess, on thinking about your goals and avenues you could go down. So you might try and look at what your goal business size is. Do you want to take on other employees? Do you want to have that management role? Obviously, this helps you scale. It might offboard some of those tasks that you don't enjoy so much. But then you have to manage them, and there's a whole other aspect of things to that as well. The ideal work-life balance that you're trying to achieve. Another good book is 4,000 Weeks by Oliver Burkeman. The idea is that you only have 4,000 weeks, so you need to be able to say no to the activities that are not aligned with what you want to do and only say yes to the things that are aligned. And so it's really easy to say no to things you don't want to do. It's easy to knock those off your plate, but oftentimes you probably have multiple different priorities. Maybe if you're like most entrepreneurs I know, you have a couple different business ventures that you want to try and go on. You probably can't say yes to both of them, and you probably can't be the most effective to both of them. And then that's just the business world. Like we talked about, we have family and that kind of a thing too. So lots of different priorities. So make sure that you're balancing those as well. And then, of course, setting financial benchmarks. All of us need to make a living in some capacity. And so understanding what that means for yourself as well is important in defining your goals and your structure. All right, we're going to move into customer research, which is kind of the next step if you are building out a business or you're wanting to kind of redefine scope and things like that. So there's 2 really good books I like to think about when it comes to customer research. The first one is The Mom Test. It's by Robert Fitzpatrick. And the idea, I guess, or the way the name came about is that if you ask your mom if this is a good business idea or I should do this, she's going to be supportive and say, yes, of course, it's great, you're amazing. But that's not going to get you the real feedback that you need to be successful. And so you need to start getting some feedback from strangers. And then the ask formula is a little bit more popular. It's by Ryan Levesque. And the idea is that you need to conduct some different surveys and then segment your audience so that you can better personalize the messaging for them a little bit more clearly. Of course, this is the key to efficient marketing. If you're targeting everyone with a very vague or weak message, it's not going to resonate very well. So you'll be more effective if you can nail the marketing and messaging. So here are some of the questions that they recommend in these books. And they can be done either through surveys or like an online kind of a survey or through like a 10 to 20-minute interview with people. I really like the option of the in-person interview or over Zoom interview, just because it helps you build that relationship with people. And if you are still looking to get some of your first customers, it is helpful because then you can reach back out to them and be like, oh, thank you so much for your feedback. Here's my product that I'm now offering or my service I'm now offering. Kind of, are you interested? So it really helps to start that conversation in just a much more relationship focused manner, I suppose. So the questions are, what is your single biggest challenge related to your topic right now? So the topic is like what you are selling. So if you're selling pet services, what's your single biggest challenge in related to training your dog right now, or dealing with whatever right now? Why is it a challenge for them? And you're looking to kind of see, what makes it so difficult, and that really kind of gets a little bit more to the heart of the problem. And then what have you tried to solve that problem so far? So have they looked on other resources? Have they Googled things? Have they watched videos? These are going to give you kind of some of the answers to where they're going for research already. And so you know the type of marketing that you need to end up creating down the line, because if everyone goes to YouTube to look to solve their problem, to learn about dog training, then that's going to be a good spot for you to focus your efforts down the line. Versus, I mean, there's also Facebook groups on dog training or things like that, right? Or like they're probably not reading the newspaper to go look for dog training advice, right? Maybe at one point in time people did, but obviously it's a little ridiculous of an example, but just trying to like prove the point, I guess. But you'd also be surprised on some of the answers you do maybe get there. I do deal with a few different medical companies, and so we're actually sending out faxes as part of our marketing efforts. Medical industries still use fax, and so it's the channel that is getting us in front of them the easiest compared to Facebook or LinkedIn or what have you, right? So yeah, don't discount that question. And then why didn't the previous solutions that they've tried work for them? So again, this just gives you a better understanding in when you're building your product out, that you can just kind of know what not to do, I guess. And the idea, I guess, as well, that Ryan mentions in his book is that people have a much easier time answering what they don't want versus what they do want. So if you think of the example of going for dinner, are you feeling like Chinese or tacos or pizza, right? It's probably much easier for you to answer what you don't want versus what you do want. And especially if your product or service is fairly revolutionary or new to the market, it's easier. People aren't going to know to ask for it if they've never heard of it before. Perfect. And then once you kind of conducted your surveys or you've done your interviews, I forgot to mention, always make sure you record your interviews so you can get a transcription as well. You want to go through and analyze the responses. So the idea is to find some of the common themes that you're going to be able to group your different respondents into. So you might have a whole, I'll keep using the pet analogy here just because I like to use that one and most people like dogs. You might have a whole group of pet owners. Some pet owners might have small dogs, they might have big dogs, maybe their dog is aggressive, maybe their dog chews everything up in their house, right? So their biggest challenge might be a little bit different. And you want to try and look at and group these into different buckets so that we can kind of narrow down the messaging for these different buckets and customize the messaging specifically for them. So if they're having issues with aggression, we're just targeting those with that type of message. Maybe that's not something our company even wants to deal with, so we're not even going to try and target those types of people, right? So that's the buckets idea. We're going to look for an 80-20 rule. So how can you target the most people with the fewest amount of messages? So obviously, if you were having a one-on-one conversation, you probably would ask them some questions and kind of customize what you're saying exactly to them. Obviously, that's not the opportunity with marketing. The idea is one-to-many, right? So we want to try and look for the biggest bang for our buck when we are creating this different messaging, just because when I say messaging, it's not just an email subject line, or it's not just a landing page header. It's the ads, the landing page, the emails, the social media posts, maybe the content buckets you're doing, maybe you're doing videos, right? So if you start to add all of those things up and you have like 10 or 20 different custom messages that you want to build that out to, it really adds up and it gets completely overwhelming. So you want to try and narrow it down to probably 3 to 5 messages at most that cover the bulk of your target audience in some capacity. Then the other thing we're going to do is in our transcripts or in our survey results, we're going to go through, and some people actually like to print this out and like physically highlight it. Just highlight the key phrases that people have around their challenges, how they're speaking about their problems, and how they describe their ideal solution, so that we can use those kinds of phrases in our copy down the line when we're making out our ads and we're making our landing pages and things of that nature. All right. So like I was kind of mentioning, the benefits of customer research, you're going to discover something new, or at least hopefully you'll discover something new about your customers. Maybe it's a challenge you didn't know they had. Maybe it's the way that they're approaching something that's a little bit different. And then you'll also be able to gain some insight into customer scenarios. So you'll see, I guess, what they've tried before, and what has and how it hasn't worked. And then you're also going to be able to customize your product or service accordingly. So if it's dog training, we were chatting about our dogs just before this. I live way up in the ranch. To try and get our dogs any kind of training is really difficult. So we need to look at online solutions or boarding solutions. We can't just pop down to Saskatoon on a weekly basis to get weekly dog training, right? So again, maybe it's not your target market, but these are just like some of the complexities or differences that might come in the scope of dog training that you might need to be willing to customize in order to adapt and meet clients' needs. All right. So now we're going to talk a little bit about like packaging it all together, building out that messaging and that kind of a thing. So we're going to take a minute, take a little pause, pop in the chat if you have either heard about Todd Brown's framework for messaging or Alex Hormozi's formula for value. I'm going to guess a lot of people have maybe heard about Alex Hormozi's formula, maybe less so about Todd Brown because he's not quite as popular. And I'll see if I can open up my chat here. April says she hasn't heard about it yet. That's good. You're in the right place. We're going to talk about it. Haven't heard of it either. Nothing? No? Okay. These are amazing people. If you are interested in some really good books, they also both have books that you can go read. Alex is super cool. His first book is $1 on Kindle. And his other book is like $10 or something. They give away so much free value. So if you're ever looking to consume overwhelming amounts of content about marketing, these are the guys to go to. But I'm glad you guys haven't heard them, and I get to talk about them a little bit with you guys. That's awesome. All right, so let's hop right into the value equation. So this is actually like, the reason it's a little blurry probably is that it's actually a screenshot from Alex Hormozi's book. The idea being that the value that you're creating or the way that you're packaging it all together has to do with these 4 factors. So the dream outcome, where is that person wanting to go? So in the little description, there's like a little island there, like the ideal island that they want to be at. Maybe they want that perfectly trained dog. Then it's multiplied by the perceived likelihood of achievement. So how likely do they think it's going to be that you are going to solve their problem? So in our dog training example, how likely is it that I think this company is going to be able to train my dog effectively? That kind of thing. Then it's divided by the time delay. So people always want results faster, and the soonest you can get them to them, the better. Obviously, you can't just expect, a dog to be fully trained in an hour in that example. But if you can start the training sooner, you can provide some resources to them a little bit sooner, then it's a little bit easier. And I guess it provides them with more value, right? Rather than having to wait or delay. And then the other thing is effort and sacrifice. I mentioned having to potentially drive 2 to 4 hours to go and find dog training based on where I live. That's a lot of effort for us to go do. So if we can reduce that, that makes it more valuable for us, right? Other things, like if you think of the regular concept of like personal training, obviously there's a lot of effort and sacrifice probably going into that. You got to show up at the gym, you got meal prep, you got to do all these things, right? So the amounts that we can, make that easier for them by providing, personalized training, maybe the facilities closer to them, maybe they get meal plans or they get food prep delivered, that kind of a thing. the lower those things are, obviously the more value there is as well. All right, next up. So the idea of crafting your message. I haven't forgotten about Todd Brown. He has the SIN offer, or that's kind of his one of his kind of methods he uses, as well as something called unique mechanisms. So the idea of a SIN offer is that it needs to be superior. It's an acronym. So superior is the S, superior to every other offer out there in any way that they can solve a problem. So is it basically just has to be better, not worse. It has to be irresistible. So the idea is that it doesn't include a ton of work, like that effort and sacrifice we were talking about before. It's not like really difficult, or the solution isn't like unattractive. I think one of the analogies he uses is that if you're trying to give out like $1,000 or $100,000 or something, and you have to go and dig through your garden into a big hole, and like all this money is like in the big bottom of a hole, it's a lot more effort and it's pretty unattractive to have to like dig through it with your hands. If that was the only option and your offer was like, we're making this really difficult, we're not giving you a shovel, it's really unattractive. But if you get a shovel, okay, that offer now becomes a little bit more attractive. If you get like a big like backhoe thing, then it's even more attractive because it's not going to be that difficult to dig out that bunch of money, right? That's the idea there. And then it has to be a no-brainer offer. Super easy to sign up for, super simple too. People are always overcomplicating their offers. They're adding in all of these different aspects to things and like trying to in the effort to try and compile more value in there, but then they just end up confusing the situation by just making it difficult and overwhelming. So the idea is that it is superior, better than anything else, irresistible, and that it is a no-brainer to sign up for. It also should have be well aligned, I guess, with potential upsells. So again, with our dog training option, maybe you are offering just a 1-hour consult, and then you have like a longer package of training that people can purchase, right? Those two things are very much in alignment versus like, hey, we just have this 1-hour consultation and now you can buy all of these dog treats for your dog, right? Those two things aren't like, they're still both for dogs, but they're not really in alignment and they don't flow very well together. And then moving on to the unique selling proposition or unique mechanism. So you've probably heard of unique selling proposition in some capacity before. I will go back at the end. Sorry, I'm just reading the chat. I will go back at the end and talk about the different names and we'll have questions. You've probably heard about, unique selling proposition, which is like the thing that your company does super unique and differently compared to every other company. But again, going back to our dog training methods or our dog training, lots of dog trainers out there, you might not be that unique. You might have just a unique mechanism, which is the way that you actually do something that's different. So if you are, just maybe your training methodology or your philosophy behind how you do what you do is a little bit different than other people's, that would be your unique mechanism. And unique mechanisms, once you know about this, you'll probably start to spot them a little bit more. The idea being that you describe the way, I guess, that things are faster, easier, and better for you. So then you can give it some really fun names. And now that ChatGPT is a thing, I like to like play around and like brainstorm with ChatGPT on fun names. But the idea is that it's like the active program or something very like scientific sounding, but not too promotional. That sounds like proprietary essentially. And you don't necessarily have to do this. It's just a really good way to like make your brand stand out a little bit better because everyone has, dog training. But if you called it like canine obedience accelerator, then it's like sounds way more cool. So that's another little tip, I guess, when you come to your messaging with it. I'll pause for any questions as we're going forward here. I think those were a couple of pretty big slides. We can go back and get the other two names. It was Alex Hormozy and Todd Brown. And then SIN message stands for superior, irresistible, and a no-brainer. Thanks for the question. Another example, I guess, of like a product that definitely kind of I've come across lately that addresses some major pain points. I just bought dish soap, and it's, instead of having to have it be one of those flippy type bottles, it's now in like a squeeze bottle that you don't have to flip over, which sounds like the smallest possible thing, but I'm like, this is amazing. Like it's like a squirty ketchup bottle instead of like, yeah, having to flip it over and make a mess, and the little screw cap that breaks and things like that. And it's just dish soap. And I was like so blown away by like how they've improved it that I'm like, oh, this is so cool. So it doesn't have to be something like crazy revolutionary. It can just be like one of those little tiny things that just makes people's life a little bit easier. All right, developing the offer. So the idea is that you want to kind of package things together, ideally in a bundle if possible, just to make it easier for people rather than having to necessarily piecemeal all of your tiny little services. So you probably do this in some capacity already. The idea, again, with our dog theme, maybe if you just bought a new dog, the store is selling a new puppy package that comes with, you know, the food, the bed, the water bowl, the training or the new puppy classes, that kind of a thing. Maybe you're offering housekeeping services. Naturally, this is bundled together in some capacity. You clean the whole house. You don't just clean the kitchen sink, right? But if you're like looking for new clients, they probably have like different packages that are a little bit bundled together. In the same sense, you could probably look at doing a different subscription model. Do people just pay monthly? Do they pay per service time? What's easier for people? And is there any opportunity for something that's like a little bit innovative or different? Obviously, the whole idea of Netflix versus going to Blockbuster and renting a 1-by-1 movie. Now we just pay the subscription kind of a thing. So it's becoming really common in some industries, but there's still a lot of different industries that can definitely benefit from that type of a thing as well. And then the last thing is guarantees. So what kinds of things can you guarantee with your offer without making it too difficult, I guess, on your company? This is always a tricky one for a lot of people as well. The idea, I guess, is that you should make the requirements of the guarantee lead to the ultimate success. So again, with our dog training, if you have your guarantee being money back guarantee, we will train your dog. Well, if the person doesn't show up to any of the training classes, you're not going to train your dog, right? So they would get their money back. So part of the guarantee would be that they have to show up at least to 80% of classes and still have the training not be effective in order to get the guarantee back. The reason we do this is it helps. Obviously, like it's a little bit more effort on their part. They do have to have some buy-in and commitment, especially if it's, you know, one of those dog training, personal training type of situations. It's also like it leads to the best success for both people because you know that showing up to class is going to lead to a better outcome for the customer. Then they're going to be happier because their dog's trained. And then it's a better outcome for you too, because now you have a happy customer and you don't have to have the refund. So that's the idea of guarantees and how to kind of build them out a little bit better. All right, up next is execution. So like I said, we aren't going to possibly be able to dive into every single channel and platform and create every little thing like that. The idea here behind execution is for your customer research, what channels did you end up getting the best responses from? And where did people say that they were looking for solutions to your problem? You want to try and pick one, maybe two of those and stick with it. I really believe that there is no need to really be everywhere all of the time. It's not worth it. You're going to be spreading yourself too thin and you're not going to be able to create really good content. I think that having good content in fewer places is going to get you more customers than having mediocre content across a bunch of different channels. The other idea of picking channels is that you need to better understand how you come across and how you present. My favorite channel for my business is LinkedIn. I like writing. I feel like I communicate a little bit better through written versus audio or video kind of components. I tried doing TikTok for a while. It was not my style. I don't come across well or knowledgeable or educated there. And it just, so there's no traction, right? So some of it is a little bit based on your personality, your style, and how you like to communicate best as well. And that being said, with some very few exceptions, there's probably going to be some component of your audience on either Facebook or Instagram, just because they are the two biggest platforms. And so they're also easiest to run ads and iterate on, should you decide to go with ads and things like that. Next up is ensuring that your brand message is consistent across all the platforms you choose to go to, along with your website. So it should have a consistent look and feel. People aren't like, oh, I'm on this beautiful Instagram page, but now when I go to actually purchase a product or contact the person, it doesn't look like it's even the same company, just because the colors or the themes or things like that are very different. And you might be looking at these things every day and being like, yeah, that's my website, and yeah, this is my Instagram. Like, it's very obvious, but if there's somebody who is new to your brand, it can be a little overwhelming. I like to think of it as if you're walking down a strip mall and you accidentally go into the wrong store because all the signs are way up top, and then you open the door and you're like, whoa, I'm in the wrong store, because all of the colors on the walls and things like that are completely different than the signage out front, right? So it's kind of the same idea if you're putting it into like a real life situation. And then for monitoring for timely adjustments, we just want to make sure that we are tracking our analytics. I like to track everything for people either weekly or daily, and sometimes even a couple times a day if you're running paid ads and you're just getting started with that. That being said, don't let it overwhelm you or completely consume you. I know you can spend probably hours trying to figure out Google Analytics and diving into there, or looking at all the different metrics on Facebook. So here, I guess, is we will cover the metrics to cover. This is the importance of tracking, I guess. You can't improve what isn't tracked. If you don't know if you don't know where you started, you don't know whether you're improving. And it's especially important to track things over time so that you can see improvement or decreases across the board. We also want to make sure that we can understand where the breakdown of your funnel is happening. So I recognize we totally didn't talk about funnels. This is a new concept for you. Don't be too terribly overwhelmed. But the idea is that somebody's going to start at the top of your funnel in a big, larger pool of people, and they're going to find you Instagram, website, searching, maybe word of mouth, they've heard about you. And then it's going to narrow down people as they start to self-select and opt into your offer. So they might go to your website, they might go to an opt-in form, they might have a phone call with you. You want to understand kind of the metrics in between each of those stages and where people are dropping off. Because if all of a sudden you find that there's like a bunch of people who are visiting your website, but nobody is filling out any of the forms on your website, maybe your form's broken. You'd be surprised how common that is, that something is not like technically working. So if you're not tracking your metrics, you would never have noticed that. So it's important to track those. And then the idea of A/B testing different options. So this most commonly comes into place, I guess, with paid ads, or if you are doing a landing page. The idea is just to test one thing against another, and you want to test one thing specifically. So you don't want to test a bunch of like a totally different ad setup, a totally different creative. You want just like one different headline. Maybe you change the image, maybe you change the audience you're targeting, things like that. But if you're not tracking, you're never going to know which one of those performed better. So it's kind of, there's no point in doing it if you don't have a tracking set up properly. And then these are some of the key metrics to track. So obviously the customer acquisition cost. So how much does it take for you to get a new customer? And then the lifetime value of that customer. So how much are you earning from them? Obviously, the acquisition needs to be lower than the lifetime value for you to be making money. There's a few other factors in there, but that's kind of the baseline. And then you also have to look at the lifetime value as a profit rather than the total revenue, because there's going to be potentially some expenses depending on your type of business. And then you also, like I said, want to look at conversion rates across your different channels so that you know which ones are being the most effective. So if you've decided to go on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube, where are you getting the most customers who actually end up purchasing from you, and focus your efforts there. We still good so far? I'm pausing for a moment. If we do have any questions, feel free and drop them in the chat. Again, this next slide's a little overwhelming, so I don't want to jump into it before we, if there's any missing pieces or questions. Oh, I see one in the Q&A here. 1 second. April says, what's your suggestion for balancing, oops, sorry about my dog, balancing the unique product country, say in a grain bin with problem, drive 1 hour from the main center? I'm not quite certain about what you're getting at with your question. Because I did mention the example of driving to go to dog training. But if you want to maybe just clarify a little bit more, April, I'm happy to answer it. I'm just not sure exactly what you mean there. But we will dive into this next one. So this next one, we're going to talk a little bit about the conversion rates on ads and how they are related. So I like to do this in Excel. I didn't want to like bring up the whole Excel thing because it gets a little overwhelming. But the idea is that if we are looking at conversion rates, you can see that we have 2 different examples. There's a 20% conversion rate and a 5% conversion rate. And that's related to the conversion rate on the website. So the way that we define that is there's people who came to your website, just looked at it, and then they converted, meaning they filled out a form in some capacity. In this case, it's the number of form fills or the number of submissions. So in this instance, we want 50 people to fill out our form or become customers. Our website conversion rate in one scenario is 20%. In the other scenario is only 5%, which means that we need a lot fewer visitors if our conversion rate is higher. So we only need 250 in the higher conversion rate versus 1,000. We're going to assume that we're running some paid ads, and people who see those ads click on the ad, they go to our website. We're going to assume that 1.5% of them do that, which is about average, depending on the industry. Then that's going to change the number of ad impressions that we need. So how many people need to see our ad? So in the one example with 20%, we need about 16,000 people to see our ad. In the other one, we need 66,000 people to see our ad. Obviously, it's going to be a lot more expensive to show the ad to a lot more people versus not having to show it to as many people. So this example is here to illustrate the conversion rate, like how just changing this one lever in optimizing your website landing page with that key messaging, with A/B testing, with tracking to know all of these stats in here, can significantly reduce the amount that you have to spend on ads. So I always get a lot of questions about this slide. It's a little bit of a new way of looking at things for people. So we'll take a little bit of a pause again and just see if there was any other questions on it. And I guess if you don't have a question, feel free and pop in the chat if you are running ads, thinking about running ads, that kind of a thing. And don't feel free, like no question is too silly. I almost guarantee that people have questions on this because it's usually a lot. But if you're not running any kind of ads or or paid metrics, this is still important because whether this is an advertising cost or it's the cost for you to generate content on social media in the sense that it's your time, even if it's still organic, there's still some sort of associated cost here. And so you want to be tracking the metrics that you're actually getting from it. Are these figures available in the analytics after running paid ads? Yes, they are. And this is, I guess, another greater challenge in that Google Analytics, if you're using that as a free tool, doesn't have such detailed impressions or detailed information about the Facebook metrics. But because we're kind of going across two different platforms here, in our example of Facebook ads going to Google Analytics, it's tricky to look at all of these different things, which leads me very nicely into our next topic about building dashboards and trying to combine all of this information so that you can see it in one handy spot. So we'll dive into that, and then I see there's another couple questions and we'll get to those. So in terms of building dashboards, you want to keep it super simple. And like I said, you can dive into so many different metrics. You just want the ones that are actually useful for you to make good business decisions. And some helpful tools for doing this: Google Data Studio, if you are a Google user, is free. Power BI, I do believe, is still free with Microsoft, or at least there's versions that are. But I also like just going into a basic Excel sheet. It's more manual, but you are able to kind of like be a little bit more intimate, I guess, with the metrics, in that you're tracking it on a daily or weekly basis, and you're like very in tune with the numbers that you're tracking. So as a reminder, kind of like what I would track are all of these stats. How much have you spent on ads in a daily or a weekly basis? How much does it cost, or what's like your audience cost is the CPM. And then your click-through rates, how many website visitors you're actually getting, the conversion rate on your website, and the number of customers that you're getting. So those are kind of like in your funnel is what I would track. This gets a lot more, it can be customized, I guess, depending on how you're running things. If you're not running ads, but you're just doing social media, or you're just doing blog posts, or you're just doing videos, obviously it's not going to be an advertising cost. It's going to be maybe time and effort to build a video, or just impressions on the video organically, things like that. So it's a little bit customizable, but this is the general overview. All right, that's dashboards. We'll go to the last slide, which is about questions, and I will come back through and answer any of these questions. So feel free to add them now. Jane, and I apologize if I mess up your names. Jana says, you mentioned landing pages for your website. What should be on the landing page to capture potential clients? A few things that come to mind are having really clear headlines and offers. What is it that you're selling? Crystal clear. And what is the key benefit for your target audience? So like we talked about with those buckets and messaging, the key benefit is going to come from one of those buckets in how you've kind of grouped people and their key challenges. You're going to use some of that. The page obviously should be mobile friendly, really easy to navigate, clear. The other thing I really like having on landing pages is videos. If you are kind of a business that does consulting or kind of works with people one-on-one, having a video on a landing page, super important. People get to know you a little bit better. You can more clearly explain your product offering. But I would not only have a video. I would also have that video as some text on your site, just so that people have the different option on how they want to consume content. And then in terms of like a call to action at the bottom, depends on how your business runs. I think that probably, yeah, I would say this. I think that the weakest call to action, or the weakest opt-in option, is just like a basic form with a name and email. That's not very, it's not very helpful for them, and it's not very enticing to opt in. Having either an option to book a meeting with you, or having a chat where people can contact you through like a little chat bot on your site, I think are probably two better options there. Or if, and this kind of comes down in the ask formula book that we were talking about, So it's not just about customer research, but once you have the different buckets that you are kind of the different buckets with the challenges that people have, you can create actually what's called a quiz funnel, put that on your landing page. And the idea behind it is that you are kind of asking some more questions to the people that visit your site so that you can provide them with custom information and the best resources to solve their problems right now. And people are way more apt to opt into this because they think they're going to get some sort of resource out of it with their challenge solved as soon as possible. And then you also get the benefit of knowing a little bit more about who's visiting your site. So a really good company, well, they're not the best company that does it, but like a good example of this that comes to mind is care.com. So they provide like home services care for a whole variety of things, dogs, seniors care, childcare, that kind of thing. But they have a couple different buttons on their site. You just click and it asks, are you looking for care or are you looking for a job, like to provide that type of care? And then if you click looking for care, it asks you, okay, well, what type of care are you looking for? Where do you live? How soon do you want it? Et cetera, et cetera. Collects all that information. It's useful because they need it to run their service, but it also is a lead generation type of a thing for them as well. Janice, do you have any tips on how to design a campaign to direct email with market research questions? So kind of like the market research questions that I had asked about, or I had presented earlier, I would do those questions. Designing a campaign, I would probably do a few different follow-up emails. It depends on where you are getting this list of emails to send out to. Keep in mind all of the castle rules, of course, but if you're doing B2B, you are able to reach out to them. I would segment if you're getting lists from different places. So say you are just kind of researching companies, finding their information on their website, and you're using LinkedIn. I would segment those into two different groups as to where you found their information and kind of send them two different campaigns that way. And then I would customize it and really focus on, and the mom book gives some good wording on this, but really focus on say, hey, I'm trying to build out this new product or offering. I came across your company or LinkedIn profile, and it seems like you're an expert in that field. Please, if you wouldn't mind, kind of helping answer a few questions, helping me cut through the clutter and really develop the best service offering for that industry. That's a really good way to go about it. It's kind of hard to like fill in the blanks there as I'm saying it out loud probably. But if you want to send me a message, I've done this type of research for my own company and for others and sent it out on primarily LinkedIn messages. That's a really good way to go. So if you want the like framework of the message that I send, I can send that out as well if you're interested. Hopefully that answers your guys' questions. If it doesn't, let me know. April, I didn't hear anything back or see anything back from you. So we won't be able to answer that one. Oh, I missed one. Carmela, do you also assist in conducting customer research? Yes, I do. I help people with that. Yeah, this is the final slide. These are the questions. This is kind of what we covered today. And I put it up there as a refresher in case you needed it there, I guess, to help think about questions. But yeah, I'm Kara Sharp. I do marketing training as well as I'm an agency owner. And I kind of alluded to multi-passionate entrepreneurs having two different ventures. I'm very much the same way. I have Front Door Media and my other company, Marketing Playbook, that does more coaching as well. Oh, we got one more. April, what's your view on outsourcing social media? This is a tricky question because I do social media for a lot of my clients. I have a really good bulk system that I am able to create repeated content at a high scale. It is not as custom to the companies because I just can't, like, I don't work in the companies and it's difficult to really understand the vibes and things like that. I also really strongly feel that video on social media and people talking about their company, about their products, about themselves, some personal aspects, depending on the business, performs a lot better. And so that's just not possible for an outsourced person to do as easily. There are some methods depending on who you're working with for if you were just to record video, send it over to them, they break it all down and then repost it for you. There are some options there. So it's a good option. I'll be completely transparent. If you try and look me up on social media, I'm terrible at it. Well, not terrible at it. I shouldn't say that. I do not put the effort into it for my own businesses because that's not the way that I acquire clients. So for me, it's not worth it to do it. If I was to do it, I would probably outsource a lot of my social media for my own company, even though I'm perfectly capable of doing it myself. It's just like an own, it's just like how I like to run things, I guess. I don't like to focus on marketing my own business. I'd rather market for other companies, I suppose. But if that is all of our questions here, we will hand it back to Jamie because I think she has a couple of closing announcements.
I do. Thank you so much, Kara. This was awesome. I always appreciate when I'm like, oh, I'm going to work in the background of our webinar. And then I end up listening to you the whole time because it's just so informative.
Yeah.
I'm quickly going to pop something in the chat, and it's a link for what I'm about to chat about. So we have been discussing the power of effective marketing strategies, and I'm thrilled to share an exclusive opportunity. We're taking these concepts to the next level with our upcoming marketing strategy in one-page workshop. You'll be diving deep into the world of strategic marketing, not just in theory, but with hands-on experience. You've seen the effectiveness of concise strategies, and this workshop is designed to help you harness that power for your own business. This is about turning your marketing dreams into tangible, measurable results. We have limited spots for the workshop. So we will be hosting in Regina on September 14th at 5 p.m. and Saskatoon on September 20th at 5 p.m. The link is in the chat. And thank you for being a part of today's webinar. Kara, if you want to send me over, I just saw in the chat that they're interested in your slides. If you want to send those to me, we will be sending out an email afterwards just about the workshop so I can have Michael include your presentation in there.
For sure, I can do that.
Perfect. And with that, I hope everyone has a great rest of their rainy Wednesday, and reach out at info@wesk.ca if you have any questions. Okay, thanks, Kara.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.